Hi guys, welcome back to more factoring trinomials. Last week, all of our trinomials did not have a leading coefficient. A leading coefficient is the number at the very beginning of the problem in front of your x squared. This week, we will have a leading coefficient. Now, we are still working in your factoring book, and we're still in the x box section. So hopefully, last week, you filled out the entire top and maybe even started on the bottom. You're going to need space on the bottom to do two more examples. We'll do one example today, and we'll do a second example tomorrow. Okay, so make sure that you have enough room to do two more Xbox problems. Before we jump into our examples, I want to remind you how Xbox works. Now, this slide you should have already written in your book. Hopefully, it's up here. So you do not need to write this slide down again. But I want to remind you what we learned last week. So last week we learned that we start with the x and we multiply the first number times the last number. Now, last week the first number was 1, but this week it's going to be a different number. So you want to make sure that you are remembering to do the first number times the last number. On the bottom, we put the middle number, the second number. And then on the sides of the x, we need to think of two numbers that multiply to the top and add to the bottom. Once we've thought of those two numbers, then we move on to the box. In the box, the first term goes in the first box. The last term goes in the last box. And on the diagonal, we take our two numbers from the sides of the x. We should also take whatever the variable was for the middle term. It's normally just the letter x, but double check and see what was your variable for the middle term and put that on the diagonal as well. Then we factor out some GCFs, and those are where we get our answer from. Maybe you noticed last week that after you were done doing the box method, your answers still had the same numbers that you got from the sides of the x. And maybe you didn't notice that, and that's okay. Basically, if there's no first number, if there's no leading coefficient, the box is just kind of extra work, and it's not necessary. And we'll talk about that a little bit more during our live session. But today, where we're going to have a first number, the box is going to be required. So today it's going to be really important that you definitely do use the box. And let's get started. So again, this is example 5. We did examples 1 through 4 last week in our factoring book. So this is example 5. So make sure you have space for example 5, and then tomorrow we're going to do example 6. So make sure you have space for both of those. And the new thing this week is I have a leading coefficient, this 3 in front of my x squared. We didn't do a problem like that last week. Lucky for us, though, the process is the same. We're going to take the first number, which this week is 3, not 1, times the last number, so 3 times -8. We're going to put that on top of our x. On the bottom of the x, we're going to put the middle number, which is 2. Next, we need to think of two numbers that multiply to make -24 and that add to make 2. If they're multiplying to make -24, we're going to need a positive and a negative. And so they're actually going to subtract to the number 2. Those two numbers are 6 and -4. 6 times -4 is -24, and 6 minus 4 is +2. Now, this week, the box is mandatory. So again, if you see that there's a number in front of your x squared, the box has to be used. It's a must. In my first box, I put my first term, the 3x squared. In my last box, I put my last term, the -8. On the diagonal, I'm taking my middle term and I'm splitting it. And so instead of 2x, I'm going to use the 6 minus 4, 6x minus 4x. So again, if I combine these two together, it should get me my middle term. From here, I like to look at the top two boxes and find what they have in common. So 3 and 6 are both divisible by 3, and then x squared and x are both divisible by x. So 3x is my starting point. Next, 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times 2 is 6x. X times -4 is -4x. And then we double check. -4 times 2 is -8. So we did good. Again, notice, and this is what will happen this week. Anytime you have a leading coefficient, you're going to get numbers. You can get a number here, or you can get a number in front of both of those. Now, last week, these were both just the letter X. That's what made it a little bit easier, and that's what made the box maybe not necessary. But this week, we are going to get numbers out here. And so for our final answer for this problem, we have the x plus 2 from across the top, and then we have the 3x minus 4 from down the side. Notice in our x, we had a 6, but there's no 6 in my parentheses, okay? So that's what makes this a little bit different. Okay, that's the only one we're going to do in our book today because we have to leave space for tomorrow's example in our book. So if you want to put your book aside and then grab some regular lined paper, I'd like us to try 2 more problems like this today just to make sure we're feeling good, okay? So regular lined paper for the next one, and the next one's going to be a try on your own. So go ahead and pause the video and try this one all by yourself. If you're struggling, here is what the x looks like. So 2 numbers that multiply to make 42 and add to make 17 are 14 and 3. Not the first things that are going to come to mind with 42. So remember, you can always make that list of numbers that multiplies to 42. Keep going with your box. Now in my box, I chose to put the 14 in the top corner and the 3x in the bottom corner. If you have those flip-flop, that's okay. We're still going to get the same answer as each other. What'll happen is what's along my left side will be across your top. And what's across my top will be along your left side, but we'll still get the same parentheses. So let's check and see if we got the same parentheses. Okay, so again, it doesn't matter what order the parentheses are in. What matters is what's inside the parentheses. So one of your parentheses should have a 2x plus 1. And again, that could also be along the left side or across the top, depending on where you put the 14x and where you put the 3x. And then in my other parentheses, you should have a 3x plus 7. Let's try one more completely on your own, no help from me. Okay, hopefully you were able to find the answer to this one. For my answer, I got 2x minus 5 and 2x plus 3. And again, those can be flip-flopped and it'll still be okay. This concludes today's video.